Sirius gazed up at the human warrior towering over him, an ancient alien pistol pressed against his temple. Just moments ago, the notorious Brunali mercenary had been an unstoppable force, his plasma blades slicing through the elite Black Ops team like a scythe through wheat. But now, faced with a weapon that nullified his every advantage, Sirius found himself in an unfamiliar position, on his knees, begging for mercy. Sergeant Austin Rice stood firm, his fingers steady on the trigger. His team had infiltrated the secret Brunali space station with a single objective: assassinate Sirius. It was a mission that had seemed impossible, given the aliens' legendary combat prowess and advanced technology. Rice's men had fought bravely, their human reflexes and marksmanship proving a match for the Brunali reinforcements. But against Sirius himself, they had been hopelessly outclassed. Now Rice was the last one standing, his fallen comrades littering the high-tech corridors. The smoke from the plasma fire hung thick in the air, mingling with the coppery scent of blood. The shrill alarm that had alerted the Brunali to their presence had faded, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. In that silence, Sirius spoke, his voice a rasping whisper. He offered Rice a deal: spare his life, and he would provide valuable intelligence about a looming threat to both their worlds. A threat that, if left unchecked, could spell the end of humanity and the Brunali alike. Rice hesitated, torn between his duty and the chance to gain a priceless edge for his people. He had seen firsthand the devastation that Sirius could unleash, and the thought of letting such a dangerous enemy live went against every instinct he had. But if there was even a chance that the aliens' information could save lives, could he really afford to pass it up? As the two warriors regarded each other amid the carnage, Rice knew that he was facing a choice that would not only determine his own fate, but could also alter the course of the galaxy itself. The ancient pistol in his hand thrummed with power, a relic of a civilization long forgotten. It was a reminder that, even in a universe filled with advanced technologies and alien threats, sometimes the key to survival lay in the secrets of the past. With a deep breath, Rice made his decision. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance, and for better or worse, the path forward would be determined by the words of an alien mercenary begging for mercy at the feet of a human soldier. Rice's mind raced as he considered Sirius's offer, the weight of the decision bearing down on him like a physical force. Slowly he lowered his weapon, the ancient pistol's hum fading to a whisper. He kept it trained on the alien mercenary, unwilling to relinquish his only advantage. "Talk," Rice demanded, his voice low and steady. "What do you know about this invasion?" Sirius met his gaze, the Brunali's eyes glinting with a mix of desperation and cunning. "I was hired by a faction within the Brunali government," he rasped, his words precise despite the pain that laced them. "They wanted me to destabilize your colonies, to make them vulnerable. It was all part of their plan to pave the way for a full-scale war." Rice's grip tightened on his pistol, the implications of Sirius's words sinking in. "And you're just telling me this out of the goodness of your heart?" A mirthless smile flickered across Sirius's face. "Hardly. I want asylum, protection. In return, I'll give you evidence of the conspiracy, help you stop the war before it starts." As Rice weighed the offer, his thoughts drifted to Sirius's past. He knew the rumors, the whispers of the Vorn warrior who had risen from slavery to become a living legend among the Brunali. A fierce fighter, undefeated in battle, his prowess earning him a place in the Brunali's ranks, even as they kept his people under their heel. Looking at Sirius now, Rice could see the scars that marked his body, the remnants of a life spent in servitude and violence. He wondered what depths of resentment must lurk beneath that battle-hardened exterior. What dreams of vengeance had driven Sirius to turn against his masters? "I need to contact my superiors," Rice said at last, his words measured. "Arrange for extraction." Sirius nodded, wincing as he shifted his weight. "Do it, but we need to move quickly. The Brunali won't let us go without a fight." Rice activated his encrypted comlink, his fingers flying over the controls. "Colonel Graves, this is Sergeant Rice. Mission status, that's complicated. Requesting immediate extraction, priority alpha. And sir, I'm bringing a guest." There was a pause, the static of the channel filling the air. Then Graves' voice crackled through, terse and strained. "Understood, Sergeant. Proceed to Hangar Bay, Russell 49. There's a freighter there. Designation V-171. Hijack it and get out of there. Fast. There's a Brunei warship inbound. ETA 30 minutes. Rice grimaced, the gravity of their situation crashing down on him. "Copy that, sir. Rice out." He turned to Sirius, his eyes hard. "Let's move. We're getting out of here. But I'm warning you. One wrong move, and I won't hesitate to put you down." Sirius met his gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "We're in this together now, human. My life depends on getting you that evidence. I won't jeopardize that." Rice hauled Sirius to his feet, the alien's blood smearing his hands. Together they set off into the station's depths, an unlikely alliance forged in the fires of betrayal and necessity. The path ahead was fraught with danger, a gauntlet of Brunei security forces standing between them and freedom. But with Sirius's knowledge of the station's secrets and Rice's tactical skills, they might just stand a chance. As they moved through the shadowed corridors, Rice couldn't help but wonder what secrets Sirius held, what dark history had shaped him into the warrior he was, and more importantly, what price would they both have to pay to unravel the conspiracy that threatened to plunge the galaxy into war. The freighter's engines roared to life as Rice slammed the throttle forward, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Sirius, hunched over the navigation console, barked out coordinates in a clipped tone. The hangar bay doors loomed ahead, still cycling open as they approached. "We're not going to make it," Rice growled, eyeing the narrowing gap. Sirius's fingers flew across the controls. "We will if I have anything to say about it." The freighter lurched as Sirius diverted power from life support to the shields. They scraped through the opening with a screech of metal on metal, the ship's hull groaning in protest. Behind them, plasma bolts from Brunei security forces splashed harmlessly against their reinforced shields. As they burst into open space, Rice's tactical display lit up with a new threat, the incoming Brunei warship, its weapons already charging. "Jumping to FTL in 3, 2, 1, Sirius called out. The stars elongated into streaks of light as the freighter made the jump, narrowly evading the warship's opening salvo. Rice let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Well," he said, turning to Sirius, "I'd say that's step 1 complete." The alien mercenary nodded, a ghost of a smile playing across his features. "Perhaps you humans aren't completely hopeless after all." Rice activated his secure comm channel. "Colonel Graves, this is Sergeant Rice. We've cleared the station and made the jump to FTL, but sir, there's been a significant development." He outlined the situation: Sirius's defection, the Brunei conspiracy, the looming threat of all-out war. As he spoke, Rice watched Sirius out of the corner of his eye, still wary of potential betrayal. Graves' voice crackled through the channel, tense with nearly unleashed urgency. "Understood, Sergeant. This changes everything. I'm ordering you to rendezvous with the USN Dauntless. Captain Steele will debrief you personally." "The Dauntless?" Rice's eyebrows shot up. "Isn't that deep in Brunei space?" "It is," Graves confirmed, "which is exactly where you need to be. Transmitting coordinates now. Good luck, Sergeant. Graves out." Rice relayed the new heading to Sirius, who input the course correction without comment. As the freighter adjusted its trajectory, an uneasy silence fell between them. "So," Rice said at last, "care to give me a preview of what I'm walking into?" Sirius met his gaze, his alien features unreadable. "War, human, unless we stop it." Hours later, the sleek form of the USN Dauntless materialized before them, its stealth systems disengaging just long enough to guide them into its hangar bay. As the freighter touched down, Rice saw a welcoming committee assembling, led by a man whose very bearing screamed veteran. Captain Nathaniel Steele's weathered face was a map of old scars and hard-won experience. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, took in Rice and Sirius with a calculating gaze. "Sergeant Rice," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble, "I understand you've brought us quite the prize." Rice saluted crisply. "Sir, this is Sirius, formerly employed by the Brunei. He claims to have critical intelligence about an impending attack. Steele's gaze locked onto Sirius, his expression hardening. Is that so? Well then, alien, let's hear what you have to say. Over the next hour in the Dauntless's secure briefing room, Sirius laid out the bones of the conspiracy. He spoke of General Zarin Krell, a Brunali warlord whose ambitions knew no bounds, of secret shipyards constructing vessels of unimaginable destructive power, of plans for a devastating first strike that would cripple humanity's defenses before they even knew they were at war. As Sirius talked, Rice watched the faces around the table. Skepticism gave way to grim understanding as the full scope of the threat became clear. When Sirius finished, silence reigned for a long moment. Captain Steele broke it, his voice low and determined. If even half of what you're saying is true, we're looking at the potential annihilation of our species. He turned to a woman seated nearby, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Lieutenant Valeris, I want you working with our guest. Verify his intel, see what else you can dig up on this General Krell. Valeris nodded sharply, her keen eyes already studying Sirius with professional interest. Yes, sir. Steele's gaze swept the room. The rest of you, prepare for high-risk covert operations. If this checks out, we may be looking at a strike against the Brunali homeworld itself. As the briefing broke up, Rice found himself standing next to Sirius in the corridor outside. The alien mercenary looked smaller somehow, stripped of his fearsome reputation and advanced weaponry. So, Rice said, I guess we're in this together now. Sirius nodded, his expression guarded. It would seem so, human. Let us hope your people are up to the task, for all our sakes. As they walked towards the ship's detention area, where Sirius would be housed until his loyalty could be confirmed, Rice couldn't shake the feeling that he'd set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy itself. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The infiltration of General Krell's compound began under cover of darkness. Rice led his team through the outskirts of the Brunali capital, their stealth suits blending seamlessly with the shadows. Sirius moved with fluid grace at Rice's side, his knowledge of Brunali security protocols proving invaluable. As they approached the perimeter, Rice's tactical display lit up with a web of intersecting sensor grids. Patrol drones incoming, he whispered, gesturing for the team to take cover. Sirius's eyes narrowed. More than expected, Krell's paranoia serves him well. They waited, breath held, as the drones passed overhead. When the coast was clear, Lieutenant Valeris stepped forward, her nimble fingers working to bypass the first layer of biometric scanners. The team slipped inside, but their progress was short-lived. Alarms blared, and reinforced bulkheads slammed shut around them. It's a trap, Rice shouted, drawing his weapon. Defensive positions now. The air crackled with energy as Brunali security forces materialized, led by a statuesque figure whose very presence radiated authority. Commander Varana, her silver eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence, raised a hand to halt her troops. You've made a grave mistake coming here, she purred, her voice silk over steel. Surrender now, and perhaps General Krell will show mercy. Rice's response was a barrage of suppressing fire. The team scattered, seeking what little cover they could find in the sterile corridors. Chaos erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on pristine walls. Rice caught glimpses of his team as they fought, Valeris sprinting towards a computer terminal, her face set with dogged willpower. Corporal Chen laying down cover fire with mechanical precision. Private Rourke barely dodging a grenade, the explosion showering him with debris. But it was Varana's tactical genius that turned the tide. Her forces moved with uncanny coordination, cutting through Rice's carefully laid plans like a scalpel. One by one, his team members were cut off, forced to fall back or risk capture. Valeris, Rice shouted into his comm. Status on that virus? Static answered him. His heart sank as he realized her channel had gone dark. A deafening explosion rocked the compound. Rice found himself thrown against a wall, ears ringing. Through the haze of smoke and pain, he saw Sirius pinned down by enemy fire. Without hesitation, Rice launched himself forward. Time seemed to slow as he crossed the open space, plasma bolts singing past him. He crashed into Sirius, shielding the alien's body with his own, as another explosion tore through the corridor. Agony lanced through Rice's side. He gritted his teeth, fighting to stay conscious. With trembling hands, he unclipped the data core from his belt, their mission's sole objective, the key to unraveling Krell's plans. "Take it," he gasped, pressing the device into Sirius's hands. "Finish the mission." Sirius stared at the data core, conflict etched across his alien features. For a heartbeat, Rice saw the calculation in those eyes, the temptation to cut and run, to save his own skin. The world faded to gray around Rice, unconsciousness threatening to claim him. His last sight was of Sirius, rising to his feet, the ancient weapon clutched in one hand and the data core in the other. A pulse of energy washed over them, and darkness took Rice at last. Rice's eyes snapped open, the sterile white ceiling of the Dauntless's medical bay swimming into focus. Pain lanced through his side as he tried to sit up, the memory of plasma fire and explosions still fresh in his mind. "Easy there, Sergeant," a gruff voice said. Rice turned his head to see Sirius, the alien's features unreadable as ever. "Valorous," Rice croaked, his throat dry. "Is she—" Before Sirius could answer, the medbay doors hissed open. Captain Steele strode in, his face etched with lines of worry. "At ease, Sergeant," Steele said, holding up a hand as Rice attempted to salute. "We've got a situation." Rice listened intently as Steele outlined the grim facts. Valeris's disappearance, the data recovered by Sirius, and the shocking revelation of Major Fuller's betrayal. Each piece of news hit like a physical blow. "Fuller's gone?" Rice asked, disbelief coloring his voice. Steele nodded grimly. "Overpowered his guards and took an escape pod. We're diverting resources to track him down, but that leaves us short-handed for the rescue op," Rice finished, his mind already racing through tactical scenarios. "Precisely," Steele confirmed, "which is why, despite your injuries, I'm putting you in command of the mission to retrieve Valeris. Sirius will be your partner." Rice glanced at the alien, seeing a flicker of something, doubt, concern, in those inhuman eyes. "Sir," Rice began, hesitation in his voice, "what if Valeris—" "You're wondering if she turned," Steele said bluntly. "The thoughts crossed my mind too, but then this came through." He activated a holo display, revealing a grainy, static-filled message. Valeris's face appeared, battered but defiant. Allowed capture. Infiltrated Krell's inner circle," her voice crackled. "But time's running out. Extraction needed ASAP. Krell has plans, genocide, human colonies." The message cut off abruptly. Silence fell over the medbay. "Well," Rice said at last, swinging his legs off the bed with a grunt of pain. "Guess that settles it. When do we leave?" Hours later, Rice found himself leading a team of dauntless Marines through the labyrinthine depths of Krell's subterranean fortress. Sirius moved like a shadow at his side, his knowledge of Brunali's security systems proving invaluable as they bypassed one deadly trap after another. The clash of battle echoed through steel corridors as they fought their way deeper. Plasma bolts sizzled past Rice's head, leaving a scorch marks on pristine walls, the air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and burning circuitry. "There!" Sirius hissed, pointing to a heavily fortified gateway. "Valeris is beyond that door." Rice's heart sank as he saw the biometric scanner. "Can you bypass it?" Sirius hesitated, conflict evident in his alien features. Yes. But Rice, you must understand. If I do this, there's no going back. My people will brand me a traitor forever." Rice met Sirius's gaze, understanding the weight of the choice before him. "It's your call," he said simply. For a long moment, Sirius stood motionless. Then, with a fluid motion, he pressed his hand to the scanner. The gateway hummed to life, locks disengaging with a series of metallic clicks. They burst into the chamber beyond, weapons at the ready. Rice's eyes widened as he took in the nightmarish array of torture devices. In the center, strapped to a cruel-looking chair, was Valeris. "About time," she croaked, managing a weak smile despite her bruises. As Rice worked to free her, Valeris's words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Krell's planning to use human bioweapons. Entire colonies wiped out. We have to stop him. A distant explosion rocked the compound. Alarms blared to life. Time to go, Rice growled, hauling Valeris to her feet. They fought their way back through the complex, Brunali forces converging on their position from all sides. Just as they neared their extraction point, a familiar figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Fuller, Rice spat, raising his weapon. The former Exo's face twisted into a sneer. You're too late, he gloated. Krell's fleet is already... His words were cut short as Sirius fired, the alien weapon leaving a smoking hole in Fuller's chest. We don't have time for monologues, Sirius said flatly. They reached the hangar bay, only to find their ship a smoldering wreck. There, Valeris shouted, pointing to a sleek, predatory craft unlike anything Rice had ever seen. Krell's prototype, warp drive capable. As they raced towards the ship, a stray blast caught Sirius in the side. The alien stumbled, green blood seeping between his fingers. Rice grabbed Sirius, hauling him bodily up the ship's ramp. Don't you dare die on me now, he growled. The engines roared to life as Rice took the controls, his hands flying over unfamiliar instruments. The hangar bay doors began to close, a wall of Brunali troops pouring in behind them. Steele, this is Rice, he barked into the comm. We've got Valeris and critical intel. Krell's invasion fleet is about to launch. We're inbound in a stolen Brunali ship. Don't shoot us down. As the prototype craft shot into the star-studded blackness of space, Rice allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They'd pulled off the impossible, but as Valeris's words echoed in his mind, he knew the real fight was only beginning. The prototype Brunali craft shuddered as Rice pushed it to its limits, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. Valeris, her face a mask of concentration, worked furiously at the navigation console. Multiple contacts incoming, she called out. Krell's squadrons are in pursuit. Rice's hands flew across the unfamiliar controls, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy weapons that lit up the space around them. The ship bucked violently as a glancing hit struck their rear shields. Sirius, Rice shouted over his shoulder. We need those weapons online. The alien mercenary grunted in pain, green blood seeping through his makeshift bandages as he dragged himself to his secondary console. Working on it, he growled. A massive cruiser suddenly materialized before them, its weapons primed and ready. A coldly familiar voice crackled over the comm. This is Major Fuller, it announced. Power down and prepare to be boarded, or I'll blow you out of the sky. Rice's eyebrows furrowed as he weighed their options. The bomber's engines sputtered, damage from Fuller's initial salvo taking its toll. With a grimace, he cut power to all non-essential systems. Valeris, he said quietly, how functional is that warp drive? Her eyes widened as she grasped his meaning. Functional enough to overload, she replied, but the resulting singularity... Do it, Rice ordered. As Fuller's tractor beams reached out to ensnare them, Valeris's fingers danced across her console. The prototype ship's stealth systems engaged, momentarily confusing the enemy sensors. Singularity forming, Valeris shouted. Brace for... The universe seemed to twist inside out. Rice's stomach lurched as reality itself warped around them. For an endless moment, there was nothing but a cacophony of impossible colors and sensations. Then, with bone-jarring force, they snapped back into normal space. Warning klaxons shrieked as system after system failed. Through the view screen, Rice glimpsed an unfamiliar world rapidly growing larger. Strap in, he yelled, fighting the controls as they plummeted towards the planet's surface. This landing's gonna hurt. The ship plowed into rocky terrain, gouging a deep furrow as it skidded to a stop. When the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the ruined vessel. Rice pried himself from the pilot's chair, wincing at the multitude of new bruises. Status report, he croaked. Valeris emerged from a tangle of debris, a gash on her forehead trickling blood. Alive, she muttered. But the ship's systems are fried. We're not getting off this rock without help. A wet cough drew their attention. Sirius lay crumpled against a bulkhead, his skin an alarming shade of pale green. "I've had better days," the alien rasped. Rice knelt beside him, assessing the damage. The wound in Sirius's side had reopened, alien blood pooling beneath him. "We need to get him proper medical attention," Rice said grimly. "And fast." Valorous nodded, already moving towards the ship's emergency supplies. "I'll see what I can cobble together for a distress beacon, but even if we can get a signal out—" She didn't need to finish the thought. They all knew the grim math. If Krell's invasion fleet jumped before help arrived, billions would die. Rice forced himself to his feet, ignoring the protests of his battered body. "Then we'd better start exploring. There's got to be something on this rock we can use." As they emerged from the wreckage, the harsh landscape of Haden IV stretched before them. Jagged rock formations pierced a bruised purple sky, while in the distance the crumbling remnants of what might have once been buildings stood as silent sentinels. "Those structures," Valeris breathed, "they're human?" Rice squinted against the alien sun's glare. "Looks like we might not be the first to crash land here after all." With Sirius supported between them, the trio set out across the barren terrain. Each step was a struggle against exhaustion and mounting despair. But as they neared the ruins, Valeris suddenly stiffened. "Wait," she hissed. "I'm picking up something. A presence." Rice's hand instinctively went to his weapon. "Hostile?" Valeris shook her head, her expression one of wonder and trepidation. "I don't think so, but definitely alien. And powerful. They're aware of us." From the shadows of the ancient human settlement, lithe figures began to emerge. Their bodies seemed to shimmer and shift, as if not fully anchored to reality. Glowing eyes regarded the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Rice swallowed hard, acutely aware of how exposed they were. "Well," he said quietly, "let's hope they're in a welcoming mood." Mood. Rice took a cautious step forward, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "We mean you no harm," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him. The response was immediate and terrifying. A barrage of bioplasma bolts erupted from the shadows, sizzling past their heads with lethal intent. Rice barely had time to shout, "Take cover!" before the air was filled with deadly energy. They scrambled behind the crumbling remnants of what might have once been a human habitation module, the ancient metal groaning under their weight. Valeris pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "They're weapons," she breathed. "I've never seen anything like them. Definitely not Brunali tech." Another volley of fire peppered their position. Rice gritted his teeth, acutely aware of Sirius's deteriorating condition. The alien mercenary's breathing had grown shallow, his skin taking on an alarming grayish tint. "We need to try to communicate," Valeris insisted. "Let me—" But before she could finish, a shimmering field of energy enveloped them. Rice felt his muscles lock up, paralyzed by some unknown force. He watched helplessly as the lithe figures emerged from their cover, moving with an otherworldly grace that defied human physiology. Their captors spoke in a language of clicks and whistles that seemed to bypass Rice's ears entirely, resonating directly within his skull. Valeris's eyes widened in recognition, her linguistic implants working overtime to decipher the alien tongue. "They're saying, 'We're the enemy,'" she managed through gritted teeth. "Something about a prophecy, a war." The aliens prodded them forward with the muzzles of their strange weapons. As they were marched through the ruins, Rice's mind raced. He tried to argue, to explain their situation, but each attempt was met with a burst of bioplasma fire near his feet. They were led deep into the heart of the abandoned colony, past crumbling structures that hinted at humanity's brief presence on this world. Finally, they reached a vast chamber that seemed to pulse with an eerie organic light. The aliens forced them into what could only be described as living cells, pulsating, semi-transparent membranes that sealed around them. Rice pounded against the strange surface, but it simply absorbed the impact of his blows. Sirius was unceremoniously dumped into a separate cell, his form barely stirring. Rice watched in helpless frustration as the mercenary's breathing grew more labored. "Valorous," he called out. "Can you understand anything they're saying?" She shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "Bits and pieces. They keep referring to us as the Scourge or the Plague. They seem convinced we're here to fulfill some kind of apocalyptic prophecy." Rice opened his mouth to respond, but suddenly the world around him began to shift. The cell's pulsating walls seemed to fade away, replaced by swirling visions of devastation. He saw a planet, Earth, wreathed in flames, great machines stalking across a ruined landscape. A voice, ancient and filled with sorrow, echoed through his mind. "We had no choice." The vision shifted, and Rice found himself staring at a towering figure, its form flickering between humanoid and something far more alien. It spoke directly into his thoughts, its words carrying the weight of eons. "The Haden must not be allowed to rise again," it intoned. "The cycle must be broken." Rice gasped as the vision faded, leaving him disoriented and reeling. He became aware of Valeris calling his name, concern evident in her voice. "What happened?" she demanded. "You went completely rigid for almost a minute." Before Rice could respond, the sound of weapons fire erupted from beyond their prison. Alarms blared, and their alien guards rushed to defensive positions. Through the translucent walls of their cells, Rice glimpsed flashes of familiar-looking plasma bolts. A figure materialized out of the chaos, a female alien, her features a softer echo of their captors. She manipulated some kind of control panel, and suddenly the cell membranes dissolved. "Quickly!" she hissed in accented but understandable English. "We don't have much time." Rice hesitated only a moment before scooping up the unconscious form of Sirius. "Who are you?" he demanded as they ran. "I am Thrakus," the alien replied, leading them through a maze of corridors. "And I am your only hope of survival on this world." As they fled deeper into the ruins, the sounds of battle faded behind them. Rice's mind raced with questions, but one thought burned brighter than the rest, the dire warning from his vision. Whatever was happening here, he realized, it was far bigger than their mission. The fate of humanity itself might hang in the balance. Rice's head throbbed as Thrakus led them through a maze of twisting organic corridors. The alien structures pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, casting shifting shadows across their path. Sirius's labored breathing echoed in the cramped passage, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. "Where are you taking us?" Valeris demanded, her voice tight with suspicion. Thrakus paused at an intersection, her multifaceted eyes scanning for threats. "To the Nexus," she replied cryptically. "It's our only hope of understanding what's truly at stake here." Before Rice could press for more information, a searing pain lanced through his skull. He stumbled, nearly dropping Sirius as fragmented images assaulted his mind. Glimpses of ancient battles, burning worlds, and colossal machines flashed before his eyes. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, struggling to maintain his grip on reality. Thrakus regarded him with a mixture of awe and concern. "The Nexus is calling to you," she whispered. "Your genetic memory is awakening." They pressed on, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. Rice's vision blurred, past and present, merging in a dizzying kaleidoscope. As they entered a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing, crystalline structure, he felt a presence brush against his consciousness. "Welcome, Inheritor," a voice echoed in his mind. "We have much to show you." Rice's world exploded in a torrent of information. He saw the birth of civilizations, the rise of the Haden, and humanity's desperate struggle for survival. Millions of years of history unfolded in seconds, each moment etched into his very being. As the vision subsided, Rice found himself standing before a shimmering interface. Without hesitation, he reached out, his fingers sinking into the living circuitry. Beside him, Sirius stirred, his eyes snapping open with newfound clarity. I remember," the alien mercenary rasped, his voice filled with wonder and horror. Together, they delved deeper into the Nexus, their minds intertwined, breaking down the barriers of species and experience. Rice felt Sirius's pain, the crushing weight of oppression that had driven him to a life of violence. In turn, Sirius experienced the burden of command that haunted Rice's every decision. As their consciousness expanded, a terrible truth crystallized. The ancient conflict between humanity and the Haden was built on a lie, a corrupted directive buried deep within the machine race's core programming. "We've been played," Rice growled, his fists clenching at the magnitude of the deception. Sirius nodded grimly. The cycle of destruction, it was never meant to be. A commotion at the chamber's entrance shattered their reverie. Haden elders burst in, their weapons trained on the intruders. But Thrakis and her followers stood between them, creating a tense standoff. "Stop!" Rice shouted, his voice carrying the weight of newfound authority. "We've uncovered the truth. The war between our peoples is based on a lie." He projected the revelations gleaned from the Nexus, raw data and emotion flooding the chamber. The Haden elders recoiled, their certainty visibly shaken. Thrakis stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. "We've been blind to our shared history. It's time to break the cycle." The tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Weapons wavered as doubt spread through the Haden ranks. But before reconciliation could take root, alarms blared throughout the complex. "Incoming vessels," a panicked voice called out. "Brunali warships entering orbit." The chamber erupted into chaos as the first impact shook the ground. Rice locked eyes with Sirius, a silent understanding passing between them. They had to get this information out, to stop Krell's invasion before it was too late. As they raced towards the surface, dodging falling debris and confused Haden forces, Rice's mind raced. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. But with each step, the psychic bond between him and Sirius grew stronger, a testament to the potential for understanding between their peoples. They emerged onto a battlefield. Brunali dropships screamed overhead, raining fire on both human and Haden alike. In the distance, Fuller's cruiser loomed ominously, its weapons primed to wipe out all evidence of this world-shaking discovery. Rice scanned the horizon, desperation clawing at his insides. They needed a way to transmit their findings, to stop this madness before it was too late. But as another barrage of Brunali fire lit up the sky, he realized with growing dread that their options were rapidly dwindling. Rice's eyes darted across the chaotic battlefield, searching for any means of escape. The Brunali warships loomed overhead, their weapon systems primed and ready to obliterate everything below. "We need to move," Sirius growled, his wounds momentarily forgotten as adrenaline surged through his alien physiology. Thrakis gestured urgently towards a half-collapsed structure. "This way! There's an underground passage that should shield us from the orbital strikes." They sprinted across the war-torn landscape, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. The ground shook violently as Fuller's ship unleashed another devastating barrage. Rice felt the heat of the explosions at his back as they dove into the relative safety of the ruined building. Valeris worked quickly to clear debris from the hidden entrance. "I'm detecting a network of tunnels below. They might lead us to safety." As they descended into the darkness, Rice's mind raced. The information they had uncovered in the Nexus could change everything, but only if they could get it out. He activated his neural link, preparing to transmit the data to the approaching human fleet. "It's no use," Valeris said, her voice tight with frustration. "Fuller's jamming all outgoing signals. We're cut off." A distant rumble echoed through the tunnels, followed by Fuller's voice crackling over their comms. "Surrender now or face annihilation. Krell's forces are within striking distance. You have no hope of survival." Rice exchanged a grim look with Sirius. The alien mercenary's eyes glowed with newfound purpose. "We may be outgunned," Sirius said, "but we're not out of options. Your human ingenuity combined with my knowledge of Haden transit tech, we might just have a chance." Thrakis tilted her head, curiosity evident in her alien features. "What do you propose?" Sirius outlined a daring plan. He and the renegade Haden would lead Fuller's ships on a wild chase, buying time for Rice to coordinate with the human reinforcements. Rice nodded, his tactical mind already seeing the potential. "There's more," Valeris interjected. "I've been analyzing the data from the Nexus. I think I know where we can find a weapon capable of turning the tide. She led them deeper into the abandoned colony, to a chamber that pulsed with otherworldly energy. At its center stood a massive artifact, its surface covered in intricate shifting patterns. A cosmic slingshot, Sirius breathed, awe evident in his voice. I thought they were only legends. Rice approached the device, feeling a strange resonance as he neared it. How does it work? Valeris's fingers flew over her datapad. It can create a slipstream portal, instantly transporting matter across vast distances. With the right targeting data, we could deliver a devastating strike to Krell's invasion force. But there's a catch, Thrakis added, her multifaceted eyes filled with concern. The slingshot requires a living consciousness to guide it. Whoever takes on that role may not survive the process. A heavy silence fell over the group. Rice looked at his companions, seeing the weight of their shared experiences reflected in their eyes. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew he had to do. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. It has to be me. Valeris opened her mouth to protest, but Rice silenced her with a look. There's no time to argue. Sirius, get your team ready for the diversion. Valeris, I need you to coordinate with Captain Steele. Make sure the Dauntless is in position to capitalize on whatever chaos we create. As the others rushed to carry out their tasks, Rice turned to face the cosmic slingshot. Its alien geometries seemed to shift and pulse in response to his proximity. He placed his hand on its surface, feeling a surge of energy course through his body. Let's hope this works, he muttered, closing his eyes as the device began to interface with his neural implants. The world around Rice faded away, replaced by a swirling vortex of cosmic energy. He felt his consciousness expanding, stretching across the vast emptiness of space. In the distance, he sensed the approach of Krell's armada, a dark stain against the tapestry of stars. With a thought, Rice activated the slingshot. A blinding flash of light erupted from the device, launching a concentrated burst of energy towards the emerging invasion fleet. As the micro-singularity tore through space-time, Rice caught a fleeting glimpse of Fuller's ships being caught in its wake. Then darkness. Valeris blinked away tears as she surveyed the burnout remains of the slingshot. The air crackled with residual energy, carrying with it the faint echoes of Rice's final moments. She knelt beside the device, her fingers gently tracing the intricate patterns on its surface. It worked, Sirius's voice came over the comms, thick with emotion. Krell's fleet, it's gone, and Fuller with it. Valeris nodded, unable to speak. Her hand brushed against a small data crystal that had materialized within the slingshot's core. As she touched it, she felt a familiar presence, fragmented and incomplete, but undeniably Rice. With shaking hands, she retrieved the crystal. Perhaps all was not lost. As the sounds of the Dauntless's landing echoed through the tunnels, Valeris clutched the data crystal to her chest. Rice's sacrifice had given them a chance at a new future, and she was determined to see it realized. The work ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in ages, there was hope. Hope for understanding between humans and Hayden. Hope for an end to centuries of conflict. And perhaps in time, hope for bringing back the man who had made it all possible. The aftermath of the cosmic battle was a tableau of destruction and somber victory. Debris from Krell's shattered fleet drifted silently through the void, a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Steele surveyed the holographic display with a mixture of awe and grief. "Status report," he commanded, his voice hoarse from hours of barking orders. Lieutenant Commander Chen looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes. "Krell's invasion force has been completely neutralized, sir. We're detecting no further hostile signatures. The Haden ships they're hailing us." Steele nodded grimly. "Put them through." The holographic display flickered, revealing the alien visage of Thrakis. Her multifaceted eyes glowed with an intensity that belied the weariness evident in her posture. "Captain," she began, her translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in her voice. We did it, but at such cost." Steele's expression resolute. "Indeed, and now we must count that cost." On the ravaged surface of Hadin IV, Sirius stood amidst the smoldering ruins of what had once been the planet's capital. The air was thick with acrid smoke and the cries of the wounded. His fellow renegades moved among the debris, tending to the injured and gathering the dead. A young Hadin, her carapace scorched and cracked, approached him with trembling steps. "Commander," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "the last stronghold of the old regime, it's fallen." Sirius placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him like a shroud. "Then our fight here is done. But our real work? That's just beginning." In the depths of the Dauntless, Valeris hunched over a complex array of quantum processors. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of Rice's consciousness scattered across subspace. Come on," she muttered, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "You have to be in there somewhere." The processors hummed and whirred, assembling ghostly snippets of data. For a moment, a familiar face coalesced on the screen, Rice's features, distorted and ethereal. His lips moved, forming words that Valeris couldn't quite hear. And then, like smoke in the wind, he was gone. Valeris slumped back in her chair, a sob catching in her throat. She had known deep down that this was a futile effort, but the reality of it, the finality of Rice's loss, hit her like a physical blow. A gentle chime interrupted her grief. "Dr. Valeris," the ship's AI intoned, "your presence is requested in the main hangar bay. The memorial service is about to begin." She took a deep breath, steeling herself. There would be time for private mourning later. Now she had a duty to perform. The hangar bay was a sea of somber faces, human and Hadin alike. Captain Steele stood at a hastily erected podium, his weathered features etched with sorrow. Beside him, Sirius and Thrakis stood in respectful silence. As Valeris approached, she felt the weight of the data crystal in her pocket, all that remained of Rice's fractured mind. She took her place beside the others, nodding to Steele. The captain cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today to honor those who gave their lives in defense of not just humanity, but of life itself. Among them, none paid a higher price than Commander Jason Rice." A holographic image flickered to life above the assembled crowd, Rice's face proud and determined. Valeris's hand trembled as she activated the interface, allowing the fragments of Rice's consciousness to speak one last time. His voice, distorted and fading, filled the hangar bay. "My friends, my family, if you're hearing this, then I'm already gone. But what we've accomplished here, it's bigger than any one life." The crowd listened in rapt silence as Rice's final message unfolded, a plea for understanding, for an end to the cycles of violence that had defined both their species for so long. As the last echoes faded, Sirius stepped forward. The hardened mercenary tilted his head back, his mandibles quivering. And then, from deep within his alien physiology, a sound emerged, a keening, mournful cry that transcended language and species. It was a warrior's lament, raw and primal, filled with all the pain and hope of their shared ordeal. As the last notes faded, Valeris felt a change ripple through the assembled crowd. Human and Hadin alike stood a little straighter, their eyes shining with renewed purpose. The trials ahead would be immense, but in this moment, she knew that Rice's sacrifice had not been in vain. Captain Steele's voice cut through the silence. "Prepare for departure. We have a long journey ahead of us." As the crowd dispersed, Valeris cast one last look at the hologram of Rice. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement, a knowing smile, a final nod of approval. Then the image winked out, leaving her alone with the enormity of the task that lay before them all.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.